Well, hello everybody. Here we are. Day 27 for me. I'm getting a late start, and I say a late start, it's 8:45. The truth is it's 8:43, and that's sort of how I think about it. But I'm rounding up just so I don't sound like a crazy person. I used to, I've done that since I was a child. I don't know what's wrong with me. I am a perfectionist, but my cousin would be like, oh, what time did you get up? Or, I don't know, whatever question she would ask me. And I'd be like, 8:43, it just, and that was before digital. I'm not sure. I don't know. We're all unique and weird in our own ways. Anyway, it's 8:44 now, in case anybody cared. So I'm getting a late start, and I'm calling it a late start because I've been up out of the bed for more than an hour. So I didn't do my get the coffee, go on the treadmill kind of deal. And when I say that I do, coffee, then treadmill, pour the coffee, get on the treadmill, it's still 30 minutes. I mean, it's still like once my feet hit the floor getting out of bed, I've still got to get on my workout clothes, walk downstairs, get my coffee. And that's not making my coffee, just pouring coffee I've already made since I'm drinking iced coffee. Put in the sugar in the half and half. As I've mentioned, even once I start cutting back on calories, I'm not cutting out the sugar in half and half. In the past, I have cut down on it. I've measured it more accurately, and I might do that, but I'm not gonna go all cray on anything, pretty much anything. The rest of my life, I'm 51 years old. I'm giving up on going crazy about doing anything to the nth degree, and I'm going to get whatever result I get out of it. So I'm not even, when it comes to losing weight, I mean, I do want to lose weight for the purpose of fitting into my clothes, but I don't really care what the number on the scale says, which is dramatically different than I thought of weight, in the past for the bulk of my life, because that was the determiner. Are you successful, in your goal or not? The number on the scale says it all, and even with, obviously, muscle weighs more than fat. So I knew that, and I was doing weight workouts for I'd say most of my workout life I've done weights in addition to cardio. So I knew that the number on the scale meant something in regard to having muscle mass. Certainly, I did definitely get a kick out of when I would go to the gynecologist once a year and got weighed. They would always have that balance scale. I knew what I weighed, and they would always put it 10 pounds less, because when you have muscle mass, it is more condensed. It weighs more, but it's more condensed in terms of measurement, and that's why you can work out and cut back on calories and not lose any weight, because if you've gained muscle mass because you're doing weight workouts, you might not lose any pounds on the scale because you've actually gained muscle weight while losing fat weight, and it's so happened to have balanced out and not caused a net loss. But you've still shrunk in your measurements. In fact, when I upload, I think it was last summer was the last time that I made an effort to change my body composition. I should phrase it that way all the time rather than lose weight. But last summer was the last time that I made a change in my calories and my working out and made an effort to lose weight and change my body composition. Actually, now that I say that, I'm thinking, no, last summer I didn't change my eating. I just added working out. And the motivation wasn't solely for me. It was because my daughter was recovering from her spinal fusion surgery, and it was critically important that she, have active exercise and movement and flexibility and whatever. I mean, she still can't tie her shoes because she can't bend her back. She slips her feet into already tied shoes, or she gets into some sort of contortion, to try to tie her shoes. And she still hasn't fully embraced that she really needs to get involved with a community of people online that also have had spinal fusion surgery to the extent that she did in terms of 2/3 of her spine. Because I'm sure they have tips and strategies and ideas of how to do things that could benefit her. But I don't have time to lead the charge on that for her, and really shouldn't have to. I mean, she's almost 16. She'll be 16 in a week, so she really, she does need to lead the charge on that. And certainly I put her on right paths, and I help her where I can, obviously. But, at some point, every one of us needs to get motivated enough by the desire to do something that we're willing to put in some of the work. And she's not there yet, and I think I've probably done her a disservice by helping her on certain things for too long. So I hope in this next 2 years she will get to the point of being motivated enough to do things. And maybe it's because it doesn't cause her enough grief yet. It's frustrating at the time, and once she figures out a way to get the shoes done, she's moved on to something else being higher priority, just like the rest of us. So anyway, got off on a tangent. What's new? Anyway, I'm calling this a late start day, not because of the time on the clock, but just because of the time span between when my feet hit the floor, getting out of bed, and when I got on the treadmill was much closer to an hour and a half than 30 minutes. And as we talked about yesterday, every minute between when my feet hit the floor and when I get on the treadmill just increases the chances I'm not going to do it. There were no thoughts of not doing it today. And the things I was doing were necessary to be done in the morning because it's recycling day. And I had a lot of large boxes for things that I had purchased. And I'd hung on to the boxes because of potential returns. I wanted to make sure that these things were going to work properly before I got rid of the boxes. And so the time had come that I had sort of said, okay, I think these things are working properly. My kids are at their dad's house this week, so I don't have a ton of recycling. And so I'm going to use the space I have in the recycling container to break down these boxes. And it took a long time. And there was one where I had ordered some wall hangings, which it was super duper how they packaged them, but it was 2 boxes, one inside the other, and the interior one had tape all over every surface practically, and staples and foam squares, 12 foam squares glued to both sides of the box, and then that part all went into another outside box. So did it keep my wall hanging from breaking? Yes, it did. But was it a pain to break down? Yes, it was. It took a very long time. So these are the things that, you have to work in your lifestyle changes around, and if you have a partner that does anything around the house, give them a hug right now, because anybody that can split the workload is a blessing in your life. And if for a moment you've forgotten that, please remember today and go hug them and say I love you and thank you. And hopefully they'll say the same thing back to you. So that took me a while, but that was done. Yay. I got them out to the curb before the recycling truck came. So victory, right? Small victories in life. Another small victory, I did indeed drink my 24 ounces of water yesterday, as I told you I would. I did not do it until 6:30 p.m., at which time I pretty much guzzled half of it. And then about 30 minutes later, I guzzled the other half. Why? Because I told you that I would. So then that made me think, okay, discipline. But yesterday when I was talking about discipline, so what is self-discipline and what is other discipline, like the commitments we make to others, and it's never worked for me to have a buddy and say, number one, I like to work out by myself with my music. That's my buddy. But any lifestyle change, it's really, the motivation has to come from within, and it has to align with how you're wired, I think, because I will not make a commitment to make a lifestyle change with somebody else, because most of the time my timing doesn't line up with their timing in terms of our readiness. And one of us is going to drag the other down. It's like tying a rope around your waist and around the other, or a three-legged race or something. You have to do it together. You have to, if you say, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this. And that works for some people. And committing to a personal trainer works for some people. They say, I would never go to the gym and work out, but if I make an appointment with my personal trainer, then that's what makes me do it. And I think that's great. I used to be a personal trainer on the side, and while at the time I didn't appreciate that type of motivation, it didn't take any more out of me per se. It was still there, and I was still doing my job and getting paid for my job, but I wished, for me, the long-term change is going to come from an internal motivation and willingness to change. And so for me, if I place that on a person outside of myself, the likelihood that I'm going to backslide after that relationship is over, especially if in that situation it's a paid relationship. So if you're not going to continue paying that person, the likelihood that I would backslide after that was over, if I was relying on them for my motivation, is very high. That might not be true for everybody. Or some people might value paying a personal trainer for the rest of their lives. And if that works, then I say do it. People pay to get their house cleaned, every week or every 2 weeks or whatever they do, for all of their adult lives. So, why not pay a personal trainer if that's something that you need to make sure that you stay healthy? Because truly, if we looked at the big picture of the math, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to do that or to pay a gym membership than it is to pay for the medical expenses that we're going to have down the road from not having, stayed healthy. So again, all flows back though to rule number 1 of lifestyle change, which is, did you say it out loud? It is do what works. And that's do what works for you, right? So I'm doing what works for me today. I hope that you're doing what works for you today. I am going to keep up the water commitment. It really, I guess it would be nice if I hydrated throughout the day, but ultimately that wasn't my goal. My goal was I'm going to drink 24 ounces of water a day, and I did that. And that's what I'm going to do again today and continue. And 24 ounces is an achievable amount. Had I committed that I was going to do 64 ounces, the 8-ounce glasses, if we set aside the fact that you can get hydration through vegetables and fruit like we talked about yesterday, if I had committed to that, I probably wouldn't have consumed 64 ounces of water between 6:30 and when I went to bed at 9:30. And if I did, I probably would have disturbed my sleep, being up in the middle of the night. I've definitely learned that I will never achieve my 6-hour chunk of sleep and my 2-hour chunk of sleep if I drink too much. And not even too much. Really, if I drink, I want to say even a cup of liquid, in the last hour of being up, I'm going to wake up at some point during the night. Excuse me. Wake up at some point during the night. So that will disturb my sleep. And then, as you know, sleep, for me at least, I think for most people, but I can speak to myself, is the foundation of everything, everything I get done in my life, everything I get done at work, every lifestyle change I'm making, the likelihood that I will do what I've committed to doing during the day and feel capable of doing what I committed to do is all based on having gotten decent sleep. And I do say decent because last night was decent. That's about all I can say for it. I don't know why, but I only slept for 4 hours in a chunk. Then I was awake for, I can't remember now, but I want to say 1 hour. Then I slept for another hour and a half. So I'm really only working on 5.5 hours of sleep. Yesterday, I think I was working on 6 hours of sleep, and I didn't crash. I stayed up till 9:30, no naps or anything. And I really, really, really try to not take naps because it messes up my sleep. I mean, I'm just better if I can be on a schedule of sleeping, and when I take a nap, that really messes it all up. I haven't been on an ideal schedule recently, but, like really strict schedule. I could go to bed at this time every night. It's interesting, maybe a few months ago, I was on this pattern of getting tired at 8:30 or 8 even, and going to bed and waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and I was actually sleeping better than other days, that my hours are different than that. So, I don't really want to do that. That doesn't really line up with my life, how are you going to have time with people if you're exhausted by 8 o'clock at night? So I don't want that to happen. But in any case, find what works for you with sleep also and do that. And I'm going to stick with my water, but I will say that yesterday was because of my commitment to do it to you guys. I do feel like if I had not committed to do it to someone outside of myself, that I wouldn't have done it. I would have gotten to 6:30 and said, well, it's too late now. I'm just going to, not that it would actually be too late, but just like mentally, I just would have clicked over to, I'll just start tomorrow. I don't know what time of day would have made that shift for me. And I don't know if it is a time of day or if it's some other trigger that would make that kind of shift for me. But at some point, I definitely shift to, might as well start tomorrow, So pay attention to that for yourself with changes that you're making. And, if it's helpful to you to commit to somebody else, try doing that. I think it is helpful for a lot of people. I'm not sure why it's not helpful for me. It was obviously yesterday in this bigger picture of saying it out loud. It was helpful for me, but in the one-on-one kind of, having a buddy on lifestyle changes, it's not. I've seen a lot of people do it with partners, their partner that they live with, and that could work, for some. I think, if anything, that would be the one that would be the most beneficial to me, but I don't know. I just don't think that would ever be my bag. Somehow, it's all got to come from within for me. So, one thing I want to talk about as we're starting to add up more changes, and maybe for some of you, you started with more changes than I did. Like I said, I started with the standing for 8 hours. Once I was sure that I was committed to doing that because I had seen myself do it and I wasn't questioning taking it off the table and not doing it anymore, that's when I added in the walking on the treadmill. Yesterday, I added in the water. I think those are the only things I'm doing now. However, for me, once I get to 3 things, if I don't have it in front of me, like in a check-off kind of sheet, tracking sheet, something where I can indicate to myself, two things. One, I can remind myself that I need to do the things. But secondly, I can check off that I did the thing, so I remember that I actually did it. Once I get to 3 things, I'll start missing things just by forgetting to do them. I wouldn't forget at 3, I wouldn't forget that I did them. I'm sure there's a number at which I might forget that I did something, like when you're in the shower and washing and you're like, did I wash my face yet or not? I really can't remember. So I'm going to go back and wash my face again, Maybe it's again, maybe it's the first time. I really can't remember if I did it, So I don't hit that point at 3 things on my daily rituals, but I definitely hit the point of maybe just slipping my mind and not doing it because I'm so focused on doing other things. So for that, on the website, I've uploaded what originally I called the Daily 10, which was I listed 10 things and have little spaces to mark when I get them done each day. I'm going to rename it. I don't know what I'm going to rename it to, but because I've tried a couple of different names, so I'm not sure what it will be named when you get to it. But it's a tracking chart, and it's basically just on the first column, you list all the things that you want to change, for now, not forever, just for now, what things that you're working on doing. And then there's just a space for each day to make a mark to indicate that you did that thing, so that you can use it as a reminder to make sure you remember what you want to do for that day. And secondly, so you can make a indication tracking wise that you did it. Because, we're going to have days that we don't do what we said we're going to do. And for me, it helps to look back and see that I did it most days. So if I miss a day or whatever on something, I can look at it and go, well, but look at this. I like to do mine with a red pen. So everything's typed up that I need to do. But when I'm marking each day, I like to do it with a red pen. And then I can look at it and go, okay, look at all that red. Look at all the days I did do the things. So yay for me. Whereas before you started making the change, it would have been a totally blank page. Right? Wouldn't have had anything on it. So, any progress is good progress. I saw a t-shirt the other day that said, stronger than yesterday. And I like it. I like anything that focuses on progress and improvement and growth. And add in the humanity that we're humans, we're not perfect, it's okay. And I think I like it because I was raised to be a perfectionist. And it still runs through me, it's wired in, hardwired from childhood. And, I've often thought about nature versus nurture, like, was I born a perfectionist or was it made by how I was parented? And I'll say both of my parents are perfectionists in very different ways. So I sort of see each of their ways within me, and I've worked on this my whole life because, I'm a recovering perfectionist because I don't think I'll ever be free of the mindset. However, I know it's a ridiculous mindset to have. It's destructive and not productive at all because you can be excellent without being perfect. And you can slow down your growth immensely by trying to be perfect, and so it's really not a productive mindset to have. But I know for sure I've had it since whenever Atari came out. I remember, it's so interesting, I don't have a great memory. So it's so interesting to me the things I do remember, like firsthand, like they couldn't have been told to me. And one of them was playing Atari video games. And, usually on those games, many of them, you would have 3 men or 3 characters or whatever, 3 players, 3 chances. And if I lost before the game would be over for that round. And so when I was just playing by myself, it was something you hook up to your TV. I was playing by myself, and I remember if I lost one of my, and I'm sorry, men versus women, but I mean, they would call them men. So if I lost one of my men really quickly, at the beginning of the game, I would start the game over. So I still had 2 men. I still could have played those out before the game was over. There were absolutely no stakes. Nobody was watching to impress. There was no high scoreboard. This was at home, so it's not like a video arcade. I wasn't competing against anybody like people do in multiplayer games now online. I wasn't betting on the game. There were no stakes at all. But for some reason, if I would lose that first man relatively quickly, I'd start the game over. And that's just weird. That to me is perfectionism. I don't know. It's very odd to me. But so I tend to lean toward it being inborn and maybe reinforced, by your upbringing. I also remember babysitting for this woman who lived down the road from us. And she had gone on a date with her husband, and I was at home with her kids at her home, and I was making Kool-Aid. I can't remember. The kids were not in the room with me. I was in her kitchen. I remember she had a white floor. I was making red Kool-Aid, and I don't know what happened, but like it slipped out of my hand. Basically, I spilled red Kool-Aid all over her kitchen, a whole pitcher of it. And that's when they got home, of course. You know, I should ask her because I'm still in touch with her because she was she lived in our neighborhood for the 50 some years that my mom lived there, so she had known me essentially my whole life, and we're still in touch because she asked, she'll email me and ask about how my mom is doing. And so I'm sure she doesn't remember this because she's also, whatever she is, 75 and has had plenty more important things happen in her life since that time, both good and difficult. And so I probably won't ask her about the Kool-Aid, but I do remember just how mortified I felt that I had spilled all this Kool-Aid all over her kitchen. I mean, here she is trying to have a relaxing night out with her husband and paying me, and gets home and then splash. Ugh. And it was like usually her husband would then drive me home because it was dark. And so, I think I ended up leaving. She's like, no, I'll clean it up. I don't know. I just remember, to me, perfectionism can lead towards mortification. That's the lesson. So anyway, the lesson should also be don't drink drinks that are simply water and sugar and food coloring. That really should have been the lesson I got. Good grief. Back then we were drinking all sorts of stuff. Tang, which, was what for the astronauts? That was powdered orange drink. Tab, which was, I think, one of the first sodas with artificial flavoring. I didn't drink it. I found it actually disgusting. So the fact that I drink Diet Coke now is sort of funny. But I do remember my cousin drinking that. It was really gross. Anyway, that was the 70s and the 80s. Plenty of yucky things happening then. But now we have kale. We have Greek yogurt. We have, I was going to say almonds, but those have now become very controversial. We have all sorts of healthy things that we can eat. So my favorite is brown rice. I love to make a bunch of brown rice at the beginning of the week and just use it in meal prep meals, put it in meal prep containers. I love Greek yogurt because it's got such high protein for such low calories. I do have to be in the mood to eat it as yogurt, like with fruit on top or whatever. But I just think it's a value buy, right? High protein, low calorie, hot calcium. I mean, how can you argue with that? Love cantaloupe. Cantaloupe, so many good vitamins in it. Vitamin C. I think it has a bunch of vitamin A as well. Relatively low calorie for the volume that you can eat. And it's delicious. So we'll talk more about food. I'm edging towards making changes with my food, as I've mentioned. So we'll probably end up talking more about that on another call or another recording. So I hope that you have a super day. I plan to have a super day. We'll see what 5.5 hours of sleep does for me. Typically, I need more, but I do sort of wonder sometimes whether I go through phases throughout the month hormonally that make me not need as much sleep. Unfortunately, other things accompany those times in the month, like, swelling in my joints and trying to think being overly hot, which really is detrimental for working out because you're already hot before you even start moving, and then you're going to raise your heart rate, get even hotter. And then for me, this time of year, the temperatures are in the 80s, so it's already hot, so anyway, but nonetheless, it's a day, it's good. I'm on the treadmill. I hope that you're doing what you've committed to do today, and I'm going to talk to you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.